Good evening. This is the Education Committee meeting. It is, what is today, June 12th, and we're in the Cardinal Room. Welcome, everyone. Are there any announcements or communications? No. There are minutes. If there are any corrections, please give them to Brooke. And then after that, we are ready to move into two presentations. So the first one is the 8th grade Ultraviolet team PBL. Nope, you're going to do yours first?
Actually, we're going to do the retiree celebration first, if you don't mind.
Oh, all right. That would be wonderful. It's not on here.
Okay, as Director of Human Resources, one of the privileges that I have is not only announcing our years of service employees, but also announcing our retirees for the past year. So I appreciate all the retirees that are here this evening, and there are some that couldn't be here with us this evening, but we're going to recognize them as well. It's something to give your career to a school district. It's not only the time spent working, but it's also those Sunday nights preparing for the week, those additional hours of overtime, whether it be paid or unpaid, and all that additional time and support we often get from family members and friends as we make our journey with our career. So, so it is again a true honor and privilege to be able to recognize our retirees for their many years of service to the Upper Dublin School District. What we're going to do is I'm going to call the name of each individual. Please come up and receive the gift that we have for you from the school district. Go around the table shaking our board members and administrators' hands. And at the very end of our ceremony, our recognition ceremony, we're going to try and snap a picture out here in the lobby. So, so don't go running off home right away. Stay with us when we finish up out in the lobby to take one photo of the whole group. So, so let's get started. First, we're going to recognize Mr. Joseph Aceta, music teacher at Thomas Fitzwater Elementary in 31 years of service to the district.
He wants a staff number 0001 preserved.
Next, we have Kim Berezovsky, librarian at Fort Washington Elementary School for 37 years. Kim here. Next is Mary Bury, a school nurse at Upper Dublin High School with 17 years of service in the district. Next on our list is Joan Brown, educational assistant at Thomas Jarretttown Elementary School, 12 years of service. Recognizing Joan. Our next retiree is Joanne DeAndrea, 12-month secretary at Upper Dublin High School, 14 years of service. Next retiree is Teresa or Terry Daly, grade 6 at Sandy Run Middle School with 29 years of service. Next is Jack Fury, guidance counselor at Upper Dublin High School, 44 years. Jack was our most senior staff member employee, so we'll see who gets that next honor. Congratulations. Next is Susan Hertz, office and cafeteria playground assistant at Maple Glen Elementary, 19 years of service in the district. Candace Kashner, ed assistant at Sandy Run Middle School with 10.5 years of experience and service in the district. Yeah. Next we have Esther Miller, grade 5 teacher at Jarretttown Elementary School, 40 years. Our next retiree is Ava Morrison, Director of Curriculum, 18.5 years in the district. Next is Lisa Robsky, Victor teacher at Thomas Fitzwater, 19 years of service in the district. Flowers from Mr. Robsky. I can't wait to make my way around. Next to be recognized is Melanie Rosano, secretary at Upper Dublin High School, 14 years of service in the district. Next is Kathy Smythe, K-12 reading coordinator and assistant principal, 23 years. Our next retiree is Donna Steck, educational assistant at Upper Dublin High School with 15 years of service in the district. Our next retiree is Cheryl Toller, bus driver and transportation with 18 years of service in the district. Our next retiree is Lorraine Townsend, custodian at Sandy Run Middle School with 11 years of service. Our next retiree is Patricia Tozzi, third grade at Thomas Fitzwater Elementary School with 23 years of service in the district. Barbara Terzer, educational assistant at Thomas Fitzwater Elementary School, 15 years of service. And next is Ryan White, elementary teacher at Fort Washington Elementary School with 13 years of service in the district. Linda Woodland, family and consumer science teacher at Sandy Run Middle School, retired with 19 years of service in the district. Michael Zallo, custodian at Fort Washington Elementary School with 42 years of service in the district. And next is Ms. Brenda Bray, our Chief Financial Officer with 10.5 years of service in the district. Yep, you did. And finally, I'm retiring from the district as well, so thank you.
No turning back now.
We're going to take a picture quickly out in the lobby. Thank you.
So good to see you. I'll see you tomorrow.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Start talking to students.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
Everything good?
Everything's great.
All right. Allow me.
Was that really not supposed to be,
It's not
should I announce the whole meeting?
No.
It's all,
No, and
it's all running?
yeah, it's all running. And I put, I'm now in the last like month, I've been putting a title at the beginning of every meeting.
So it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter. They'll know what it is. You're fine.
Yeah, I'll take it off. No, I'm just bring the mic to them and I'll pass it back.
Oh, really?
Quick 2-minute intro and we'll go.
Like right now.
Right.
Things in your life are hard for someone.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we're all over it. It's really
Ready to get this show running?
So it's when, summer arrives and the air conditioning gets turned on and it's like, one girl forgot her sweater. No, you forgot. And they're like screaming to try to keep warm and the men are like taking off and hanging out. It's just so funny. It's totally my house. This is women's winter. Wow. I know, it's long. Congratulations. Have fun with your plate.
multitasking.
Is the microwave safe?
Is it drinks?
Okay, now that we have congratulated all our retirees, we can get back to our presentations. So the first presentation is the 8th grade Ultraviolet project-based learning presentation, and we're very excited to hear from you all.
So good evening. I'm just going to give a few remarks by way of introduction and context. So a couple of years ago, we had a cohort of faculty and administrators from Sandy Run Middle School partner with the Institute for Personalized Learning. And it was a year-long reflection on their practice and what they could do to build a capacity for student agency. And we have teachers who are doing this work at 6th grade and at 7th grade. At 8th grade, we have a number of teachers with a deep passion that lobby to come together and reform their own team, to come together as a team to create a wraparound experience for kids and coordinate this work. This is a video that came out in the fall. It captures the experience of the learning these kids had. And so we're going to play the video just to sort of refresh our minds and create a visual for those of us who weren't in those classrooms, who didn't see this happening. And then I'm going to pass the microphone to our students here who are going to introduce themselves, and Dr. Parkin as well, for a Q&A by way of reflection on their learning experience this year. Learning is most effective when students are co-designers of the learning. This year at Standing Run Middle School, we have a cohort of teachers working with their students to develop best practices around personalized learning, to develop a culture of student empowerment and deep commitment.
So in the past, we would just have like a teacher in front of the classroom explaining this unit, and then we would just take notes, and I would usually lose interest very early on. But having these project-based learning units, it's really interesting and engaging. And I feel like I'm more interested, and I'm more eager to do the project or learn the unit.
Normally, also, you would just sit in class and listen to the teacher lecture about each subject, whereas for about 3 months where we were doing the units in Park Ride, we would all be collaborating with our teachers. We would be able to meet them one-on-one if we had questions, rather than just listening as a whole.
What I see is that they don't really know what they like. They don't really know what their passion is. They're young, they're 13 and 14 years old. So the idea is that we have to guide them to finding what they like to do.
It's a personal experience when you are doing personalized learning. So the better you know your student, the better you can help them co-design their learning.
We also are trying to offer a lot of choice. Choice is always, whether it's academics or whether it's just your everyday life. You know, people appreciate and have a greater sense of satisfaction if they're not being told what to do. If they feel like they have a certain, use the word agency a lot, if they have the agency to direct their own education.
The students have to understand their interests, what inspires them and what motivates them. So once a student understands all of that material, they can then start to make decisions on how to demonstrate their understanding. You know, old school, when we were in school, it was always a test, a quiz, and then you move on and you just forget it. You know, it's like a cram for the quiz and forget. So the idea here is that if the student understands how they're wired mentally, with all the different facets in place for their education, they understand it, they can start to make decisions on how to demonstrate this understanding.
All of them are different ways of approaching these tasks or this unit. So like say one could be like draw a diagram of how potential energy could transfer to kinetic energy. Or you could have like a worksheet where you describe it all, where you write a poem about how potential becomes kinetic.
We often in English give choice at the end of the unit, but how we get to the choice isn't always customized. And so, you know, right now in speech, in our persuasive unit, students are figuring out how they will, in the end, use their persuasive skills to convince an audience, and what audience that looks like is up to them, whether it's in class, or they're going to go out to the school board, or to Dr. Clark, or Meghan Markle wrote to Procter & Gamble. So some of them are reaching out beyond the walls of the classroom, and I think that's kind of where it gets real and authentic.
One of our projects on the UB team, we did this amusement park project, where we split up into teams and then we built our plan for anything that we want to say, like a roller coaster, a shop, a restaurant for this park. So at the end, we all presented our projects, and we had real world audiences such as like people from the administration or like parents or like people from the community who would like to see our project. So then they came and then we got to present all of our projects to them.
When we share our learning beyond the classroom, I think it truly shows us how things work in the real world, whereas we're applying and collaborating with our peers, working together, not only for the amusement park specifically, to get each of our individual projects done that we need to do for school, but also we're collaborating with others to help them reach their goals, much like you do in the real world when you're collaborating with your colleagues on a project or something.
Been a teacher for 20 plus years. For the majority of that, very traditional classroom, in front of the room. I planned the lessons, I planned what everybody was going to learn. I planned when a test was, when they were taking it, prepared everybody's data, you know, it was just very much, this is our curriculum, this is what we do. And now, I don't do any of that, truly. I am helping students navigate their own path mathematically. Truly, the only similarity that I see between then and now is the content that we must cover hasn't changed. But how they are learning the material is completely different. I work with individuals versus large groups, occasionally small groups. I am assisting them with concepts that they are ready to learn when they are ready to learn it. They are asking me pointed questions. I am helping them with that. Then they go on their own, they finish what they're doing. I don't see blank stares anymore. I don't have kids who are supposed to be taking notes, not taking notes anymore. They are responsible. I can see what they're doing. I know who's working, who's not. I feel like I have a much better insight into my students as individuals versus, oh, this class is doing this or that class is doing that. So they're managing their time, they're figuring out the pieces to my course, and they're really in control, and I think they're learning a lot about themselves as students and as individuals and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are.
So in math, specifically, we're able to guide on our own path rather and learning what we're ready to learn than learning one topic at a time that some students may be ready to learn, whereas others aren't, which I really feel like is a lot better for a lot of students in terms of grading and stuff like that.
Every project that we do, we will have like a reflection at the end. And then she'll see what we enjoyed and what we enjoyed less. So then after that, she would take those and then make the next project that we do better and like improve it to make it more like fun for like all the kids.
So you put it all together, they understand how they're wired, they design their own assessments, their own curriculum, or their own instructional piece with our guidance, and then we're monitoring to make sure that they're hitting the standards we need them to hit.
So now I'm going to pass it on. If you would each take the mic, pass it down, introduce yourselves, and then we'll just have an open Q&A. School board, Dr. Yanni, they'll start guiding you. You guys are going to do great. Oh, that would be great. But you know, the camera is on a tripod, so we could easily move it and sway that over there and capture it all. It'd be fine.
I'm Owen Schwein.
Hi, my name is Dolly Saville.
I'm Liam Bray.
I'm Sophia DaCosta. And I'm Matisse McKenna.
Johanna Parkin.
So I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight, and Mrs. Parkin Dr. Parkin. Dr. Parkin for bringing you tonight, and for the parents that are also here. I think I'd like to start off by asking, what did you find to be your greatest success on the personalized learning team this year, and what did you find to be a challenge that you had to overcome?
With all the group projects that we did, we really got to learn how to thrive in a group environment and how to work with other people a lot.
You don't have to be afraid to talk, no one bites.
Something that I think was I could work more on or the teachers could fix a little was towards the end we were in the same group for 3 months in a row the whole day, and depending on who you liked or if you worked well with those people, it was a little hard because you were with those people like 24/7 in the school day. But other than that, it was really good to learn how to work with other people that you're not used to. So.
One of the other we could change is that like budgeting like time to do projects and like do like the like regular school learning that we have to fit in. So like you can get like a bit of like what you need to learn of everything. You can like help your students learn too.
So I think the curriculum where we, our teachers taught with not having guided notes and trying to make sure that we understood the material was really beneficial to us all, so that we could apply that learning then to like the projects that we did.
Another thing along with like group learning, we also learned how to work independently, like to take care of our own like self and to carry through with the rest of the group.
In math especially, I really liked how we were picking our own topics to learn and picking our own tests and took them when we wanted to, when we were ready. And a lot of us really thrived that way because we weren't being lectured and we were all ready for what we wanted to be ready for. Like, it wasn't something the whole class was learning that some people knew more or less. It was really whatever we wanted.
Another thing to add on to what Soleil said about math is that like last year, my experience learning as like a whole class was hard for me because like they would go too fast and I wouldn't learn for myself. So learning to do it this year with my own pace really helped.
Also to point out, like specifically in English class, I really found that I grew more this year as a writer because instead of our teachers giving us topics like write about this or write about that, we got to choose and really reflect our emotions to show our teachers what we did learn, and we got to pick like, for example, one of our poetry units, we got to pick one section of poetry to focus on and write about.
If I could ask another question specifically about math. So you mentioned that you were able to pick out the topics that you wanted to learn about. So were those topics that you were able to pick, were they from sort of a list of here are the things that we have to learn this year, and you pick from those in the order in which you did that?
Well, so basically with the program that we did, Alex, we all had I had 370 topics or something like that. And I could choose which topics I wanted to do at what time, but in the end I had to do like all of them and make sure I got it 100% in Alex.
Like our teacher would set like topic goals for the week, like you have to learn 10 topics by the end of like this week, or then like you have to do homework over the weekend. And that like she would tell us like, okay, you have to do 5 or like 3 quizzes over the marking period to get done. So like you make sure you stay at the same pace you would if you did regular learning and still get more benefit from it.
What about when you had a question or you were struggling with something? What did that look like? Not just in math, but in any of the subjects. What does that look like?
You could probably go to like, I went to my teachers if like I needed help with like a subject of any kind, or like with like the math, if you didn't know like how to do a problem, like you could click on like the explanation. It could tell you like how to solve it like step by step.
All our teachers were very open about coming in advisory, and whenever we needed them to help us, and even during class, you could just raise your hand and they would easily come over. And all of our teachers have help days, so if there was a day we were really struggling or needed most of their attention, we could go to their advisory on that certain day, and then we would get the help we needed.
Also this year I felt that it was a really great learning experience on how to properly communicate and advocate for yourself with your teachers as we're heading into high school. For example, if we felt that we didn't understand something because of the way that our team was organized, we felt it very easy to go to our teachers because we had a much more
open relationship between teachers and students.
I don't want to hog the mic too much, so this will be my last question before I open up. And this, can I ask Dr. Parkin a question?
Depends what's
How has your instruction changed this year versus other years?
You know, if I'm honest, I have to say that this has just been how I've taught since I started teaching. So I used to do something, and I still continue to do the writing-based practice, which in large part is the same kind of thing. Small groups, large groups, individual, personalized. So for me, the change was learning along with the kids how to incorporate new teachers, new thoughts, to begin to trust each other, just in the way they began to trust themselves and trust us. And I think that is the biggest change for myself, which I think in itself is huge, more so than how I taught. I always taught this way. I don't know why, I just did, but learning to work with different teachers and personalities, such as the same thing that they do. So I think that would have to be, that's what I would say.
Before you hand the mic back, I have one more question for you. This is just to understand. This was a whole team, all subjects. Is that the way it worked?
A whole team, 4 subjects, so science, social studies, math, and English. We integrated, I would say, 75% of the time. We did project-based and personalized, all in one fell swoop. Brand new team, new to each other. And I think it was successful for the first year, for sure.
Did any of the work go across classes or disciplines? Was there co-teaching across, like, social studies and science, or math and science?
Do you want?
They can answer.
Not really all that much. Sometimes we'd be in social studies and we'd have to work on like a reflection for English, but other than that, we didn't really do much of anything like that.
There was like this one time, like at the end of the school year, like we were making a script for English for the drama unit, and then we also wanted to like incorporate social studies and science into it. So like our task was to pick from five topics in social studies and 2 topics in science to try to incorporate in our script to make it go with all the subjects.
I have one other question. So not long ago, we heard from the high school students who were in one project-based learning class. And one of the things they said was they were so engaged and working hard in that one subject, they didn't think they could do project-based learning in every subject at the same time. So how did it feel to you compared to when you had classes that were not organized this way?
Honestly, I think it was easier this way because for me, the project-based learning, I learn easier with visuals and writing and stuff. So I don't know about the other students, but I think we can all say that it was pretty fun and it was very easy to manage all our time when we did all this stuff.
Another thing is that the teachers give us a lot of time in class to prepare for whatever project we're doing, which helps a lot. So we don't have a lot of homework unless we don't get the work done in that class, which helps us focus.
Also, even though, like we said, it was across 4 classes, English, social studies, science, and math, it kind of felt like at times when we were doing project, it was all together in one because the teachers did such a good job of blending all of our curriculums into that one project that it made it more manageable for us to finish the project.
Other people have questions?
Hi there. First off, thank you again for being here. One thing I love about the idea of this is that each one of you are unique as learners, and so to try to make this somewhat personal, what did you learn about yourself as a learner?
So last year we did a whole project where we learned about our learning skills and stuff. And the best way I found out that I learned is kinesthetically, which is more hands-on projects. So it was really neat to be like on this team with projects because it helped me like to learn a lot more about it. And like in our English class, we did a project with the poetry, and we had to like decide like what kind of poetry, like we had to prove that it was poetry. And I chose to like push myself with it, and I chose to do art, and I had to choose like how do you say it? Sorry. I had to prove that it was poetry, and like the project that I did for it was I painted like a whole like art thing, and then I had a canvas, yeah. I had to paint a whole canvas and like write poems like on that painting, and I really enjoyed it because I learned a lot about like how like art and stuff, and how I actually really like painting and stuff.
Like I said earlier, I learned visually and like Sophia kinesthetically. So with this whole project-based learning, it really helped me develop more as a learner and a person because I learned how to like challenge myself, but it also helped me because I learned a little easier than last year besides getting lectures all the time.
Personally, I found that it was my first year at the Upper Dublin School District this year, so it was very important to me to kind of find like how I fit into the curriculum and how I collaborated with the other students. And I feel like it was very easy on this team because we had much more of an kind of open concept kind of learning. So for a lot of our projects, like I can't even count on one hand how many times we met together as an entire team and talked with one another about things rather than just like staying isolated in each of our classes. We came together as an entire team.
Thanks for being here and for telling us your experiences. One of my questions is, how did you come on this team? What happened before you started the school year that caused you to be on the Ultraviolet team?
Well, during the summer of last year, I just found out that I was going to be on the Violet team, and I just thought it was going to be like a regular old team like every other year in the past. But then when I came into school and they were telling us about what like we were going to be doing like the rest of the year with like project-based learning and stuff, it sounded a lot more fun than what normally we do in school. So.
Like with the very first day of school, like I was expecting to like walk into homeroom, then go class to class, and the teachers explain what they're going to be learning and like the overlay of the whole year. But like the first day of school, we went into homeroom, and I'm pretty sure like we went into like the hallway and like met as a group, like all the classes together, and like try to get each other to like know each other and like where you could be like best fitted as a group and like try to get to like be friends with others that you haven't met before.
I think along with like all the other teams in the 8th grade, like Lime and Silver, it was kind of just like randomly picked. But I feel like within the first week of being on the Violet team, we all kind of got to know that it wasn't just going to be like any other team, like because we did a flag project where we were put into groups, and then in like this purple flag that we would hang in the hallway, we had to reflect each of our groups. And it was just kind of interesting because we started the project or the year out with like a small project. So I guess that's how we all kind of became accustomed to the project-based learning.
Great. A few more questions, if you don't mind. What advice do you have for your successors? So people who are coming from 7th grade, going into 8th grade, what advice would you have for them if they're coming on the project-based learning team?
Like I know in past years I've gotten really stressed out about like all the work I have, but this year like I would just say to, like don't get stressed out. It's really not that hard, and like just ask your teachers for help because they help a lot.
I would tell them instead of being like nervous to be excited, because I know every year like people tell you that it's not stressful, it's not like whatever, but this year it really wasn't that stressful, and it was really interesting to see where every student fit in and how they excelled really well in classes. So it was really exciting.
I would say just to have like an open mind going into the team. So like if you like before like you start, you feel like this isn't gonna benefit you, it's only gonna put yourself down more and just like sort of even stress you out more and make things like not as fun for you, and you won't be as engaged in the learning as others will.
My last question. You all come across as very confident and strong students. What happened when you were at a point where you struggled and things were maybe not as easy or not as clear where you were going to go? What did you do? How did you work together with your peers and with your teacher?
Sometimes when we were in groups with people that we like, that are hard to get along with, it was tough like getting them to do what you needed them to do, like if you were like a leader in that group. But mostly you just have to like work with them and like not get too like angry at them, because then nothing gets done.
Going off what Liam said, I had an experience with like a group that everyone wasn't pulling their weight. So I went up to my teacher and he gave me some advice, but it also taught me how to advocate for myself and deal with the situation in my own like mind and figure out how to deal with it.
So Soleil and Liam mentioned how they went to their teachers when they needed help for things. But I found also this year was very beneficial because we were all so close as a team to go to our peers and talk about things that we didn't understand, because even if you don't understand something, out of the 85 kids on the team, there has to be one kid that understands it. So because of how open we were with each other and how we collaborated constantly, it was very easy to just go up to someone and ask like for help.
So I was fortunate enough to visit the amusement park Friday that day. How much of the time was spent on, that was just one piece of what you did throughout the school year? Okay, and how much time was spent on that? Because that seemed like it was incredibly prepared and everybody presented, and I thought it was a great morning to see what was done.
Yeah, that project was like really fun, and most of the time we did all the building of like all the things that you saw like on the tables, like the roller coasters and stuff. We did that in science class for the most part. Sometimes we would have days where we would spend the entire morning like working on it as a team. But then, yeah, it was really it was really good to have everyone working as a team. So if you had help with if you needed help, then you could just ask all your other teammates about it.
Another thing is that it did take a long time, but it also helped with not just your group helping with your own project, but other groups coming to help after they finished, which helped a lot. And while we were also building that, we made a resume, we learned how to do that. We learned how to do a cover letter. And we also learned about explorers, and we had to do a whole speech about that. So.
Going back to your question, I would say that the project was about probably 3 months total from just our teachers rolling it out till the final day. But in there we spent maybe 1 week building and then another week mainly focusing on getting our cover letters done, like Sophia mentioned. Yeah.
So if you were the superintendent of schools, what would you recommend in terms of implementing this or starting this in a larger? I mean, the Violet team took advantage of this and you were able to do it. At what grade do you think you would benefit? And I have another question about the high school that you're going to be coming in, but how can we expand this? Because this was a first year project, one team.
I think 6th graders would really benefit from it, coming into a new school with a whole bunch of new people and having project or based learning. You'd be able to learn about all the other kids in your grade and be able to see what being in a group is all about.
I think what Liam said is true. 6th graders would definitely like it. And I think maybe if they do like it, you could keep going, like you could take a break in 7th grade, see like the feedback, how well they excel and stuff. And then if they do well, you could continue it in 8th grade. Because I definitely think that this year, if we did it throughout all the teams, I remember telling like all my friends from different teams about it, and they were like, that sounds really cool. So I think it would be really great for the whole grade to do it.
I think it's really important that middle schoolers and even high schoolers to have this experience, because after you finish elementary school, there's kind of like this stereotypical, like everything's uptight now, like everything matters, because you start switching classes, you're not with the same, like just one teacher anymore. But I felt like if all kids got to experience this kind of personalized learning, it wouldn't be as stressful, even as the material gets harder into middle school and high school.
What about the 6th grade and the 8th grade working together on some projects? Do you think that would benefit both groups?
I feel like it would benefit it a lot, because like the 8th graders could help out like the 6th graders of what like the 8th graders could look back and be like, okay, what did I struggle on in 6th grade that I could help my like 6th grade or like friends or classmates, like help them out with that you struggled on.
Also by doing these projects, it like brings everyone super close. Like on the Violet team, it feels like we're a family basically, because all of us like can talk to each other at any time, because everyone's like so nice and open, since we did like switch classes a lot and different projects and stuff like that. So I think if we worked with the 6th graders, it would also help like them get closer with us and us closer with them.
Because 85 of you basically was split up into different groups regardless of what the class was. So you all got to experience all 85 worked in different groups. It wasn't just one class and moving.
That's the one luxury we have, is that you can take, we change these.
You need a microphone.
One of the luxuries of this team is that we have a hallway to ourselves. This is the first time. And we change these kids' groups constantly. So the dynamic was always changing. I think we changed you guys 4 times. We had cores, we had fruits, we had, I don't know what, we had colors, whatever it was. And I think the idea of always changing, at the beginning the kids were, they're not used to that. But by the time, January rolled around, they understood that they were going to change, and the dynamic of the classrooms always was changing. And it was, I think, very productive for them and for us as teachers to always move the kids around. So it was great.
So Dr. Parkin, if we just close our eyes and open our eyes again, we see a new Sandy Run Middle School with the teams together, with a large collaborative space of between 80 and 100 kids. That will be exciting.
Well, that would be great, because then you can we used the lobby a lot, we used our hallway all the time, and I think for this to be successful, you have to be together. We would always meet as a group in the morning, 88 of us. Here's the plan for the day, and I think you can't really do that effectively in one classroom, all jammed in. And I think it was effective, I think, for the teachers as well. Like, you learn as you go along. I think it was a great experience.
One follow-up question. What are the plans for expanding this? It may be for Dr. Parkin or anyone else.
We'll be doing a postmortem of the data from this team, looking at local assessment data, state assessment data, also gathering information from some teachers and obviously from kids to decide the path forward. One of the things, and I'll talk about it in my presentation in a little bit, we want to make sure that we're meeting standards and personalizing. And so as we expand it, this team worked really well together. Kudos to the kids and kudos to the teachers for constantly communicating. Part of the success of this is that the adults were able to collaborate really well all the time. There was a lot of trust built. It would not nearly have been as successful as it was if the team of teachers didn't have that good, tight, professional bond where collaboration was the norm.
Were these the teachers who were part of, I guess it was the trip to Wisconsin, so it's the same group of teachers working together?
Dr. Clark, do you want to come up to the microphone and speak? Oh.
We all of us were on different teams throughout our careers. We all went to Wisconsin. We started this way back, I would say at the IU a couple years ago or a year and a half ago, and only a few of us were part of that. And as the word spread, like Rob Miller, he's been teaching like this for a while. I think that the word got out, we were all put on this team together. We knew of each other, we didn't know each other at all. And we just learned to give and take. You know, there's room for growth, as there is for the kids as well. But I think for the first year out, it really was, we worked a lot. It was hard, it was a hard work. And I think that would be the reason why someone would decide to either do it or not do it. And you know, we're no spring chickens anymore, and it was a lot of work. It really was. It was beyond. We worked probably 2 hours every day while we did these huge projects, and that's a lot, and it was new for all of us, so it was worthwhile for sure.
Do you think it would be hard to maintain that level of intensity, or do you think that, I mean, I would characterize you as leaders, that not everyone will rise to that challenge?
I think next year will be stronger and better. We are getting together Monday and we're going to review everything. I think a large part of this, the way we teach, is reflection. And I do that through English. And everything they write, I read. And I go back to my team and we say, what can we do to improve? You know, they are the people. So just because they don't like something, that's not what they're reflecting on. They're reflecting on how their strength, their weakness, and our strengths and our weaknesses. We as a team have to be willing to look at ourselves and fix it. So I think that's what's going to be the make or break for next year.
So in terms of recommendations for maybe expanding this, what do you think a team needs to make this, a team of teachers needs to make this work really well?
Hard work, willingness to really let go of what you have done for 20 years or 25 years and be willing to, and that is really it. You know, the willingness for me to drop my entire English curriculum that I've done for decades to say, let me push into science, let me push into social studies, and math was difficult, but to have to redo everything, that's no joke. And next year will be that much easier and that much stronger because we've already done it one time. And for me, I can see I would do that differently. And you know, these guys say they're guinea pigs. I guess in a sense they were, but not so much, not when you look. You're always fine-tuning things as you move along. So I would think hard work and the willingness to change. That's the big piece, the willingness to change.
So, you know, just listening to you and what you accomplished and what you learned, it sounds like it was a very positive experience. And just the fact that you all spoke so well, I guess that shows that, you know, a certain amount of learning and to present yourself and to talk to adults and other people. So thank you very much.
Hold on. Amy, do you have any questions, Amy? Do you have a question?
Oh.
I have one last question. This is real easy, okay? How did you 5 win the opportunity to present to the school board?
Well, when Dr. Parkin asked me, I was honestly kind of scared. Then I realized it's like a pretty cool opportunity to like show everyone what we do and like incorporate it into other like grades and stuff.
Same with Liam. I was like a little nervous because it's like board members and stuff, but my mom was talking to me and she was like, you have a big opportunity and it's an honor like to be chosen, so I'm proud of all of us.
So I did the other panel along with the high school PBL team and some other students from the other 8th grade teams earlier in the year. And when Dr. Parkin presented this opportunity to me, I was really excited to talk about it with you guys on a larger scale rather than just to the teachers that we were talking to before.
Yeah, and don't forget, you're the experts now. We don't know very much yet.
I was really nervous because I'm not really a great public speaker. And so then my mom was just like, just do it, like, it's fine. So I was like, I don't want to disappoint Dr. Parkin, so I'll just do it.
Back to the question, like, I feel like how we got chosen, it was like the biggest leaders on the team of like who you think would like reflect the best of like this whole process this year, so that's why I think we got. Okay.
Any final comments from anyone?
So, because I promised that you'd be out of here at 6:30, I want to say a massive thank you to all of you. The questions towards the end, right? How do we move this forward? And Dr. Yanni and I have had conversations around this, right? And one is to take a deep, I love the word postmortem, it's just such a great word term. But it's how we go and we reflect, right? We take a real critical look at what we've done and what's working. And every month, a team of teachers from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade have been meeting. And that monthly group ebbs and flows from 12 to 24 teachers who are interested in the work. And what we happened this year is with students and teachers, we built distributed expertise. We have the leadership now with students and teachers to move this forward. And the next step is to do that reflective work, to look at data, to look at learning, to look at practice, but what we've done is we've created a lot of interest in the work. And that really happened because of all of you, it happened because of you. So thank you very much. Go enjoy your summer evening.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Yanni, can you make this as interesting as the 8th graders?
Well, I'll either do it in verse, or I'll do it. I'll either do it in verse or I'll sing it. Neither one will be anywhere nearly as good as the students did. My presentation tonight is rather brief, but it's going to do a little bit of looking back at where we were and where we need to head next as a district from my perspective as your superintendent. So about a week ago, I emailed our entire staff and said that as we continue moving forward, one of the things that we need to do is develop some clarity, consistency, and coherence around procedures. In the district, we spend a lot of time wading through procedural items and therefore not spending enough time or getting to the work at hand, the work of schools, the work with kids, as quickly as we could. So one of the things we've been very intentional about, and we will continue to be intentional about, are building very coherent processes moving forward so that as situations arise, as we go through different processes, we're not arguing about how to get from point A to point B. So when you think about the 3 C's, clarity, consistency, and coherence, those are the 3 C's that we most often talk about. But if you look at that second row, capabilities, competencies, and capacities, If you look at those 3 C's, those are the 3 C's that we're going to focus on next year as we develop our staff. So capabilities, what are the individual and capabilities of our staff? At every moment, we need to know what our staff knows and is able to do. If as leaders we don't know where our staff is, we can't help grow them, and that also means knowing ourselves as leaders. Competencies, what must our staff be able to do on behalf of students? And capacities, I would argue that building capacity is one of the most critical things that we as school leaders do. So what capacities must be built to increase our efficacy on behalf of students? How do we make teachers better teachers? How do we make our principals better principals? How do we make our supervisors and directors better supervisors and directors? How do we make the superintendent a better superintendent? How do we look and say, look at our support staff, a group that is largely neglected when it comes to professional development, and how can we ensure that those folks constantly receive professional development, whether they interact with students or not. So building capacity in our staff is going to be a huge focus for us moving forward. Some real talk. As a district, we need to stop chasing the latest initiative. One of the things that we talked about at the very beginning of this year was that we weren't going to use the word initiative, and we weren't going to be on this perpetual cycle of bringing in new initiatives year after year, because what happens is people tune out. It's too much. And so we have to take what we're doing and continue to grow and become deeper experts with that. So if we maintain a focus on students, if we implement a curriculum that is focused, if we provide opportunities for students to be challenged and to receive support, and we support our staff with high quality PD, then we will naturally increase student achievement and growth, increase student engagement in the learning process, and empower our kids to be successful not only when they're with us, but when they're not with us. I want you to look on the left-hand side of that chart. Maintaining a focus on students. We always think we're making decisions in the best interest of students. We have to not only say it, we have to mean it. So little people first, big people last. Implement curriculum that is focused. Over the last couple of years, there have been some major curriculum revisions. We need to not constantly change course, but we need to look and say, what are the best practices with curriculum? How do we implement those best practices? And how do we develop very high-level expertise in our administrators and teachers to deliver that curriculum? Provide opportunities for students to be challenged and to receive support. Districts are really good at providing support structures. What districts are not necessarily good at are finding ways to make sure that our kids are challenged. We talk all the time about how we have kids in a gifted program, but then we have a whole cadre of students on every grade level that often need more challenge, more rigor, and they're not necessarily identified as gifted. And so next year we're going to be engaging in a full year analysis of how can we provide in the moment daily enrichment for kids that need it. The board received a copy of the final draft, or I should say a draft of the whole strategic action plan process. Very pleased that when we sent the individual plans out to the community, we received 336 comments back, or 336 people provided feedback on the strategic action plans. And we went through all of that feedback and we looked for themes. There were a lot of people that said, thanks for doing this, this is good. There were a lot of people that provided really good and critical and constructive feedback. But when we look at the 6 areas that are going to be part of our strategic plan, or that are part of our strategic plan, every piece of that plan points right back to our kids. So teaching and learning. How do we best meet the needs of our kids through what we teach in their classrooms every single day? Technology and innovation. How do we use technology to complement, not supplant, really good instruction? Engagement. How do we engage not only our students, but their parents, their guardians, their families, and our entire community in the educational process? From the HR lens, how do we continue to attract and maintain high quality staff? One of the things that the board knows is at our June 24th legislative meeting, you're going to be approving the lion's share of the new hires for next school year. We were able this year to get out into the market very early. We've run really rigorous processes, and we feel very confident that when the names that we'll bring to you on the 24th are the best and highest quality candidates that we can put in front of our kids. From a budget and finance standpoint, how can we best prioritize spending so that we prioritize classrooms first? Every dollar that we can possibly route to the classroom, we have to make sure is spent on things that are meaningful and purposeful in our classrooms. And from a facility and operations standpoint, how do we create physical environments that are safe and conducive to learning? So I want you to think for a moment of our organization. So I am your superintendent, and the cabinet of administrators that work with me at district office are a group, and then we have our principals and assistant principals who are a group, and then we have our curriculum supervisors who are a group. Next year, we're going to be going through a process through the University of Washington Center for Educational Leadership that is probably the most intensive professional development administrators can go through. A group of 15 of us, myself included, will go through a process where our skills at observing teachers in the classroom, observing students in the classroom, and providing feedback will be honed in a year-long process. We will then, that group of 15, will then turn that training around to the rest of our administrative team. So over a calendar year, we will have all of our administrators trained to do really good instructional walkthroughs in our classrooms, prepare really good professional development, and to really understand what it means to be an instructional leader in their department and in that building. We owe that to our teachers, we owe that to our kids, we owe that to our community. If we as school leaders are not as highly developed as possible, we're not going to be able to move Upper Dublin at the speed and to the heights that we know that we're able to. So some focus areas for 2019-2020, and I wrote something here, it's part of a quote, goals without plans are simply wishes. So at the elementary school, elementary literacy development, we previously spoke about piloting Fountas and Pinal. We're going to do that in about 16 elementary classroom. Teachers are very excited. Dr. Miner has spent the last couple of years developing capacity in our staff, our elementary staff, to implement reading workshop. And Fountas and Pinal are the two premier leading researchers in reading instruction. Our reading instruction is good. It could be much better, but we need to put the right resources in our teachers' hands to make sure that we have stellar literacy instruction in every classroom. If we don't have really strong literacy instruction at our elementary schools, we don't create strong and solid foundations for our kids. We're going to be looking at standards of mathematical processes. So, one of the things we always, in the past we've said, well, we blame Eureka for low math scores, and then districts that have everyday math, they blame everyday math, and districts that have Go Math blame Go Math. And it is really becoming less about what the program is and what we're doing with the program. So we're going to be very systematic about how we're looking at mathematics instruction at our elementary schools. As a state, there's something amiss. That's not an excuse, but we need to find out what's amiss in Upper Dublin so that we can propel kids forward. We have revised progress reports coming out next year that are clearer and easier to understand for parents and guardians and families. We're going to continue the implementation of co-teaching at the elementary schools. This is another one of the areas that Dr. Miner has really taken on full force. We have co-teaching happening at all 4 of our elementary schools. Looks a little bit different in each of the elementary schools based upon the need and the culture of the building, but we've seen a lot of success there. We're going to be reviewing both gifted and enrichment services, as I said. Really, the analysis of gifted is going to be a much shorter process than the analysis of how we provide really good enrichment to our kids in classrooms. We're going to continue the response to instruction, the RTI framework. What's really interesting is we are in year 3 of RTI, and we are sending kids to the middle school next year, and far fewer 5th graders going to 6th graders are in need of intervention going to the middle school. And that's because we're systematically providing very targeted interventions at the elementary level and closing instructional gaps for kids. Focus on social, emotional, and mental health issues. That's going to remain a focus for the foreseeable future. We need to have kids that are socially and emotionally stable in our classes, and if kids are having issues and struggles, we have to respond dynamically as schools and as a district to support kids there. And then really looking at an analysis of programming through an equity lens. So are we making sure that anything that we're implementing, anything that we're doing is equitable for all kids? At Sandy Run Middle School, we have realigned interventions for students. So one of the things when we started to look at how we are structuring Students' Day, we looked at, every year there would be a group of students put into reading strategies in grade 6. And putting kids in reading strategies in grade 6, it deprived them of exposure to exploratory world language. So when we looked carefully at the list of kids that would have been recommended for the reading strategies class, many of those students were already at or near grade level, or many of them were already getting intervention through special education, and so we're able to redeploy staff and support kids in the regular education 6th grade ELA classroom. We're also bringing research-based interventions from elementary to the middle school. So you've heard us talk about LLI, Level Literacy Intervention. LLI is empirically proven, it's research-based, and it's one of the interventions, one of the best interventions out there to close reading gaps for kids. So we're actually having our reading specialists at the middle school trained to deliver that intervention. Continued co-teaching in the building. Elimination of the lowest math track in grade 6. 602, which was the lowest math class, is no more starting next year. And as we move forward, the next year, the lowest level math in 7th grade will disappear, and then the lowest level math in 8th grade. We need to make sure that we're providing really good math instruction to all kids. And so that in and of itself is not going to be enough, but there will be some really targeted professional development next year for our 6th grade math teachers. We're looking at illustrative mathematics at the middle school and at the high school. Illustrative mathematics is an open source resource that really builds and sustains critical thinking in kids. It's based on what they call low floor, high ceiling problems, where all kids can be successful at some level with the problems that are presented to them. With the idea, it goes back to that quote, when you increase the tides, all ships will rise, that it really pushes kids consistently outside of their comfort zone. We are going to be taking a very hard and critical look at assessment and grading practices. We don't have alignment right now across departments and across grade levels, so we're going to be taking a look at that. And again, those last three bullet points are the same as elementary, looking at gifted and enrichment services, focusing on social, emotional, and mental health, and then the analysis of programming through an equity lens. And then at the high school, the continued analysis of assessment and grading practices, support for co-teaching. This year, our elementary staff have had a consultant work with them from the MCIU on a regular basis to develop a co-teaching model. We're in year 3 of co-teaching at the high school. We need to provide some of that targeted support for our co-teachers to make sure that we're highly effective there. Differentiated instruction through supportive and personalized lenses. I don't know that any district in the past has done a great job doing professional development and making sure that teachers were really differentiating instruction. And so at the secondary level, we're going to look at differentiated instruction through how much support we're giving to kids, not necessarily all kids doing something different. And then review of both gifted and enrichment services. At the high school, many students don't take any of the gifted offerings because they take honors and advanced placement classes, but we still have gifted students at the high school, and what can we do for them? And again, social, emotional, mental health, and analysis of programming through that equity lens. So we're in a little bit of a waiting game right now. I mentioned a little while ago that we have to do a post-mortem. We can see our PSSA scores. They're not yet certified, and they're changing on a daily basis a little bit as the state attributes kids back and forth. So we're waiting for those to be certified. They're to be certified on June 25th. So once they're certified, we'll be able to publish preliminary results, and of course we'll do a more in-depth presentation. Keystone scores are not yet available for English literature, Algebra 1, and biology. And advanced placement scores are not in yet, and ACT and SAT scores will come over the summer, and those usually get embargoed. When we get them, they're usually embargoed for 2 weeks that we can't share. There's I call it the 2-week cooling off period. That's where the College Board decides where they're going to draw some cut lines based upon how many kids receive 3s, 4s, and 5s on advanced placements, and how the College Board is going to spin SAT scores as well. School performance profiles, all of that data that goes into the school performance profile is dependent upon all those aforementioned data measures. But the one thing that we are able to do now, through the collective work of our administrative team, we've developed something called the Upper Dublin Scorecard. So as you know, we, school districts in Pennsylvania, are judged primarily on standardized test scores. And that's important. And the community, we take public money, and you know, the community has a right to demand the highest quality schools and the highest quality education possible. But what those standardized test scores don't do is capture many of the things that are not directly linked to a standardized test. So our scorecard over the summer, we'll be finalizing this and putting this up on the website with live links. So of course we're still going to include the standardized testing measures, so they're in one place for staff and community to look at. But we're also going to be looking at awards and recognitions. This is a look at the high school. What awards and recognitions did our students receive during the year that are apart from standardized testing? What about scholarships? We had a beautiful commencement ceremony last night. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships have been awarded to our students, and we really need to celebrate that. That doesn't always get celebrated when we look at Keystone results, but there are many points of pride there. We know this year we had 16 national merit semifinalists. So when you look, we had the most in the region, and when you look at the percentage of students, we were high up there as well. We were also, last night at our commencement exercises, 2 students were honored for going into military service. And then we're also going to be posting college acceptance and matriculation lists. Many school districts, what they do is they publish where kids are going. We're going to publish that, but we're also going to publish a supplementary list that shows all of the colleges and universities that kids were accepted to. There is, like many high-performing districts, people say, oh, well, you're not nearly getting as many kids as you can into the top-tier schools. And we can argue that point is either true or not. What I can say is, so you have the top-tier colleges that don't provide much financial support for families. But the colleges and universities, one tier below, the last 3 to 5 years have thrown money at kids and families like nothing I've ever seen before. And so even though we're in an affluent community, when you're looking at going to college and what you're going to come out with in terms of student loan debt, I can go to Penn and get nothing, but I can go to a college that might be a notch down or a university that's a notch down, and they're going to give me a scholarship or multiple scholarships that equal 75% or more of tuition. We're also going to be listing our participation in and offerings, extracurriculars, athletic offerings, and community study. Our kids at our high school go out and spend several weeks doing community study. They have simply amazing experiences. I think the community should know where our kids are going, what type of experiences that they're getting. Do something very similar at the middle school. A few less things to focus on at the middle school because we don't have kids that are graduating K-12. But what awards have our students received? What recognitions? And again, what extracurricular offerings, athletic offerings, and service projects happen at the middle school? And then for the elementary, looking at many of the same things in terms of how we've recognized kids. Most recently, Jaredtown Elementary was in the national top 10 for first in math competition. It's something that really should be celebrated. Districts don't always do a great job of selling ourselves, so this is a way, a repository, to gather all of that information so that when we look at standardized test scores, we can say, here's where we are in terms of standardized test scores, here's where we are with everything else. And it's absolutely not an attempt to say that standardized test scores aren't important, but what it is an attempt to do is say, let's look at the comprehensive picture of the district. So really excited about that. I anticipate by about August 1st or so, the scorecard will be completely done. That's when we'll have all the data and it will be available for the community to see. So the path forward. Right now, the board is in the process of evaluating me. That's why I haven't made any stupid jokes tonight. I didn't want to get those ratings to go down. There'll be some collaborative goal setting between the board and the superintendent. Per Act 82, the board and the superintendent have to agree to some objective performance measures. Once my goals are set, then I'll be meeting with members of the leadership team. We'll be setting their goals, and then in September at our legislative meeting, I'll be asking the board to take action to approve our district goals for the year. One of the things I want to remind everyone, part of the purpose, or actually the purpose of doing the set of strategic action plans is to lay out a clear roadmap of where we want to go over the next 2, 3, 5 years. So what you'll start seeing in July on legislative meeting agendas and even in committees is when we bring something forth for consideration, we will actually link to that part of the strategic plan so that you'll be able to see how we're actually working towards meeting those goals. I think it makes it pretty transparent then for the community, especially when we're making large purchases or changing a direction. If we always link back to our strategic plan, which is all focused on kids, it keeps our decision making really tight. And with that, I will turn it over to the board for questions.
Thank you for That was a good summary. I have one comment and two questions. So I'll start with a comment. The one thing that, I really like the fact that we have strategic action plans and a focus for going forward. But I also really like and have always wanted to do something like the scorecard. I never thought that test scores or any summary number give you a full picture of a district. I've never liked rankings. I think tests in general give you a picture when you break it down of where you have strengths and weaknesses. So I'm not against testing, which is similar to what you said. But the fact that we can show a much richer and fuller picture, because what we really want to know is what are we doing to engage and educate all our kids. So thank you for that. That's really, I think, a nice improvement going forward. So my two questions are pretty specific. One is, how are you selecting the 15 people for the University of Washington PD? Do you want to answer one first?
Sure. So the 15 people will be comprised of Dr. Miner, Mr. Hoffman, who will join us next week, and myself. We will also be including our building principals, one assistant principal at each of our secondary schools, and then our English supervisor, Brina Vandergrift, and our math supervisor, Meg Kowalski. That group will then, once we're trained, what's that?
I sneezed, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said Jill. I was like, I thought I said building principals. Bless you. So then, we will then be taking time to invest that time, paying it forward with the rest of our administrative staff.
My other question is, this is the first time I heard illustrative math, and I want to know how it fits with whatever else we're doing.
So illustrative math has been an outgrowth of the work that we've been doing to really focus on individualizing instruction in the math classroom. Right now we're using a program called Carnegie, and when districts purchased Carnegie, Carnegie was the only, or one of the only, available resources out there that were Common Core aligned. When Pennsylvania adopted the Pennsylvania Core, much of the National Common Core is in our standards, but there are some differences that people think are very slight, but they're actually really big. And illustrative, because it's an open source resource, it's dynamic. So as the state makes changes with standards, as things develop, that resource changes with.
So it's replacing Carnegie, is that?
It will.
Oh, okay.
It will. We're going to pilot it next year. One of the things, and I understand why we went with Carnegie, because we had, you had to move somewhere with Common Core, but looking at doing it in a pilot to make sure, taking a taste of it to make sure that it does what it says it's going to do, along with the work around looking really intensely at math practices.
Other questions?
I'm really happy to see the 3 C's and the clarification on that. I think it's definitely key, not just for people at the leadership end of the district, but for everybody involved, including the community and parents, students. I think my question is, what are you doing to get the staff to really understand this and on board so that everybody has the common goal and move forward? I think that's going to be a big next step.
So I think what has happened as the year progressed and we've had some turnover in administration and we're bringing some new administrators on board, we've started to have conversations at IPD, at building level, with building level teams, really asking people what their frustrations are. And one of the frustrations that keeps coming up time and time again is that we're always figuring out how to get something done. And so then we started asking the question, wouldn't it be great if we had a set of clear processes, a set of clear procedures, so that as situations come up or we're making some changes, we can actually get to the work instead of trying to wade through the process. So, one of the things, anytime we talk about putting a process in place, it's really been, I would say, well regarded in terms of, putting some parameters or expectations around how we're going to do something so that we can, I say all the time to the staff that everybody has a finite amount of time and a finite amount of energy. And if we spend all of our time and energy wading through sort of process-oriented things, we never get to the real work that impacts kids. And we're also giving people, input into the processes that we're putting in place, which is helpful.
And now one more question about the strategic action plan, the human resources. I'm excited to hear that you have a good slate of new staff. Can you also talk a little bit about diversity in that? Because highly qualified is one thing, but I think diversity is probably as important.
So, as in past years, we made concerted efforts to attract diverse candidates. So, we targeted some job fairs, we did some targeted recruiting. I think for the first time, when you meet the candidates, you'll see that we do have some diversity in the hiring that we're doing for next year. We're always looking for the best candidate, and we were really lucky this year. I think one of the things that was negotiated in the teacher's contract, the new teacher's contract, was if the teachers let us know by March 1st that they were retiring, they got a tiny little bonus. It was de minimis, but what it did was allowed the district to get out into the market for teachers early. And so where in the past we were just now going out into the market for teachers, or after the 4th of July going out for teachers, we're done. It's been a grueling, I would say, about 2 months of interviewing teachers, but what I know, we have an exceptional group of candidates to bring forward to you. Some with experience, some with not a lot of experience, but there's a real spark in some of the folks that we can cultivate their talent.
Quick question, just going back to the 3 C's. How is that in particular going to impact the HR process at the front end? So I can understand how the reorganization are kind of making sure that the entire staff gets aligned with all the C's, but more specific on the front end, how do you expect that to work with new hires as you guys just did?
Right, so one of the things that we did before we started looking for teachers is we built a profile of what we were looking for in candidates. So we were far more intentional about how we selected candidates for interviews, how we moved candidates from an initial screening to a first round interview to actually doing a demonstration lesson in front of kids during the year, not just sitting across table from administrators, but actually interacting with kids that they could potentially interact with if they got hired. So one of the things that we'll be spending a significant amount of time on, and right now we have 2 positions that we're getting ready to interview, and that's supervisor of special ed and also a school psychologist. We're going to be building a very clear profile of exactly what we want in a candidate. And one of the things that we say is we are willing to wait for great. We're not going to hire to settle, but we'll wait for great. And so a lot of it is careful recruiting, and don't tell anybody I'm saying this, but anybody can make a cover letter look great. Everyone's going to give you the most wonderful letters of recommendation in their application profile. I'm putting less and less stock in those pieces. We're putting much more stock in the interaction across the table, the interaction with kids, calling folks that aren't on people's reference lists to see what they're really like, and possibly even doing some site visits to make sure that we put the best people in front of our kids.
Also, asking specific to maybe perhaps clarify. So you said in one statement this idea that we're not going to chase new shiny initiatives, and yet at the same time, we're going to consistently review and make and implement changes. And so, for example, some of the things, including math, et cetera, some might call those new initiatives. So how do you clarify so that it's not simply saying we're choosing a new initiative, we're simply, again, making sure that we're doing what's right and what's best?
That's a good point, and thank you for bringing that up and giving me the opportunity to clarify that. So, illustrative mathematics is not going to be the magic bullet. What it is going to do, we're already focusing on standards of mathematical practices. That's going to allow us to focus on that more intensely and more clearly with kids. The same thing with the elementary literacy pilot. We're doing guided reading, teachers are doing a good job with it. We need to give them the materials to continue doing a good job with it. And so I'll be more careful when I speak about the idea of new initiatives and thank you for, letting me clarify. No, that's important.
So I can only just think of a great quote by Abraham Lincoln that would have been extremely appropriate for your presentation tonight.
Notice I didn't put it in there.
I'm extremely disappointed that it's not in here. But I think so much of this makes so much sense when we start looking. I know we're starting to look at next summer and how we can implement a true summer academy program. So can you just elaborate a little bit on what some of your ideas for next summer?
So I was inspired by this year's production of Grease that our high school kids did. So we're going to call it Summer Dublin. Tell me more. Come on, you're supposed to be. Really what sort of this vision that I've sort of cast out is, we do ESY and we do a robotics offering. What I would really like to do is capitalize on connecting with businesses, connecting with universities, connecting with agencies, and create a true summer academy for kids in grade bands, K-2, 3-5, 6-8, and 9-12, where we have a mixture of our own staff teaching some things, but then, for example, we are connecting and working collaboratively with a restaurant and a chef to do things like Iron Chef competitions. Going into laboratories to see how, clinical trials are done. Make it this idea that summer can really be fun, but it can also be incredibly enriching. And looking to do that at not an exorbitant cost, obviously, to the district, but looking to branch out and have some corporate sponsors to do that. We're very blessed to be situated in an area where we have tremendous opportunities all around us. So it's going to be, lassoing all of that back and thinking about how we can create some synergy between the district and outside resources to make a summer offering that's really great for kids.
But I think there's also a lot of opportunities that we have in terms of bringing some of those businesses, those engineering, into our buildings. And
Absolutely. Just when you look at the office park alone and the businesses that are down there in the office park, I'm not always sure that everyone knows what's down in the office park, right? So, that's literally in our backyard. In the age of technology, we can be connecting with researchers in the field all around the country and all around the world. So, I think what's going to be really important is to, number one, ask kids what they're interested in. So that'll start happening in the fall, and then building a cadre of resources around what our kids are really attracted to.
Two quick comments and a question. First, it brought to mind something when you presented, and also Dr. Parkin made a comment about the willingness to change. And I just want to say that I think the way that you present information and sharing pretty honestly where we need to go has filtered down clearly through the whole team in the district. And so for that, I'm very appreciative, because that's the only way we get better. So that's really exciting. Comment about something else that was shared earlier and also dovetails with what you talked about with progress reporting and report cards. The students that just went through this personalized learning talked about completing a questionnaire, learning about themselves, being able to identify what kind of learners they are. I would hate for that great, important information to be lost. Is there a way to incorporate it into their records, share it with teachers down the road, getting other kids to do something like that. That was more of a comment than a question. So maybe I had two questions. So there was a question about that, and also, can you talk a little bit about, from the HR perspective, where you might be taking Induction next, given that we have new folks, given that you've been here a year? There's a lot of research about how critical those first 3 years in the district are. So those two pieces.
So let me start with Induction. We're going to run Induction almost like a graduate course, quite honestly, with job-embedded professional development and training that we know new teachers need to be successful. We're going to be asking our principals in the next couple of days to start thinking about potential folks in their buildings that could serve as mentors, right? And so as we want to pair our new staff and our new teachers with highly effective teachers. So we're going to be looking at all kinds of data measures to make sure that we're identifying the most highly effective mentors. And actually we'll be doing some training with the mentors as well. The Induction program is really going to focus on some procedural things, but also on heavy-duty instructional topics. What assessment literacy is, what feedback circles are for kids, what structures need to be in place in classrooms for kids to be successful. Dr. Miner is going to be running the lion's share of Induction. Mr. Hoffman will also be running it, and then other administrators will be coming in and out as their area is discussed, whether it's technology, special ed, pupil services, or what have you. So we're going to make sure that our new staff feel really supported from day one. That it's not, here's your mentor, and I'm not suggesting this is how it happens, but you know, the craziness of a school year starting up, a lot of times that's when our new staff feel the most alone, and we want to make sure that we over support rather than leave folks out. And then the other question that you had was how to capture student qualitative information. So one of the things that I really think we need to be doing more of, and it feeds into career readiness, are doing individual student profiles, so where kids can really self-identify where they are, what they want to learn, where they think their strengths are. The other thing, the other piece that we really want to embed in multiple areas of the curriculum is time for kids to reflect, because getting the A at the end of the essay is great, but getting kids to reflect about how they think they did on something to make sure that it's their best work is really important. I'm also going to be asking a few teachers to pilot something called student-led conferences next year, where kids actually sit at the conference and help facilitate the conversation so that kids are speaking about their work products with the teacher there for the teacher to support and chime in, but really at a young age continue to build and grow that metacognition in kids about what they're able to do. It's interesting, when you ask kids what they're good at, they often shortchange themselves. And if we start building that metacognition through reflective practices, I think we can really increase student engagement. You'll hear kids say, I'm bad at math. Why are you bad at math? Because I got a B. This doesn't mean you're bad at math. Tell me how you feel about math. Where are your struggles? Where are your successes? And building that cognition is really important.
The other item I'm thinking about, Dr. Yanni, is college and career readiness. And, I haven't looked in great detail, and I'm just hoping that we're looking to do a better job in terms of identifying students that can benefit from Eastern.
Oh, agreed. I think one of the things we have to, first of all, provide opportunities for kids to visit. We have to provide opportunities for kids that might want to shadow peers over at Eastern. And one of the things that we talked about as a superintendent group is when we talk about college and career readiness, we almost need to take that college piece and move it to the side a little bit. We talked about this a little bit at EAC last week as well. Really, we have to have kids start identifying, even at the most primal level, what is it that you want to do? And then once you identify what it is that interests you, what it is that you might want to do, then we can help craft a path to help kids get there. It doesn't mean that they can't change their mind, that they can't change course. But if we just say, you know, here are your options. You stay here, or you go to Eastern, you go to college. You know, I think there's still a stigma around CTCs. I'm very hopeful that Dr. Plesnarski, the new executive director at Eastern, she's going to be coming out and speaking with our administrators. I think she's going to be looking at Eastern through a very different lens. And we're looking at things like getting a megatronics program over at Eastern, looking at those chronically under-enrolled courses and asking tough questions. Does that program need to exist? What do kids want? What would be attractive to them? So I think you'll see with her help over the next 2 to 3 years, sort of a rebranding and a different lens that we'll be looking at Eastern through.
Any other questions or comments?
Dr. Yanni, was there a pattern why the newly hired staff wanted to teach in Upper Dublin?
Was there a pattern? We were really nice to them at job fairs. I think you know, there are some folks coming from other districts that, you know, they took a job and they got some experience and now they want to work in Upper Dublin for the sense of community that's here. A lot of it is, quite frankly, kids that grew up in this area that want to give back to this, you know, this area. So it's been really interesting. We even went out and did a job fair as far out as Kutztown University in Berks County, and we actually attracted a couple of those candidates down this way. It was really difficult though once you sort of get out of the Tri-County region to, you know, to grab people from other areas. But overall, there was a general excitement about Upper Dublin and what we offer kids.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say this is our last education meeting of the year. Any success that I've had this year is also the success of our leadership team. So I want to thank the administrators that are here and the administrators that aren't here tonight. It's been a year of getting to know each other, learning to live with the new superintendent, who can get fiery at some times, but really coming together as a team and really all focusing on the 4,100 kids that come here every day and how to make this place the best for them. So thank you. My heartfelt thanks to all of the administrators that are here and the ones that I know are watching from home on the live stream. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's move on to our reports and recommendations. Dr. Yanni, do you want to address the Adolescent Sleepiness Task Force?
Yes, I'd like the board to consider approval of a task force to study next year the issue of adolescent sleepiness. We've had some discussions about school start times. That's just one facet. I'd really want to look at sleep hygiene, what we're doing with homework, what we're doing with scheduling for kids, how we do school in general. So if the board is amenable to it, I would really like the establishment of a task force, and we'll start soliciting volunteers for that over the summer.
Well, as you probably know, I'm very much in favor of this, and I think it's an issue we need to look at. Does anyone else have any comments about it? We're moving it forward. Okay. Summer curriculum projects.
There are a host of things that we need to do this summer. Typically, I'm not sure in the past that all of these projects were brought to the board for approval, but we are going to be bringing some staff in on a limited basis this summer to do some curriculum work for some areas that we've already identified as or need some revision and some enhancement. So we're being as judicious as possible. but we are, these funds are budgeted for in our curriculum budget for teachers to do some summer work under the guidance of administration.
I know we've talked here and there about not taking teachers out of the classroom quite as much. So, and I also think that concentrated work, you probably get a lot more done per hour put into it than you do during the year. So
absolutely,
I'm all in favor of these two projects. Any other?
Just a quick question about the summer curriculum projects. Are there very clear deliverables for those? Because sometimes these projects sort of
yes,
end up in a black hole.
There will be deliverables, and in fact, the deliverables, the curriculum products have to be turned in with time cards for payment to be processed, so that we make sure that work product was actually finished and ready to go for the fall.
Anything else? So we'll move both of those forward. That would be B and C. Okay. Open up resources.
The open up resources, that is the illustrative math items that we talked about. If there's any additional questions, I'll be happy to address those.
That seems fine. My one comment is if that is tomorrow and Friday, that probably will be a ratification by the time it comes up.
It will. One of the things that we asked for the very best, their very best folks to come out and train and work with our teachers. We didn't want sales pitches. And so we had to do the training in a quick turnaround time. So if the board's amenable, if we can do a ratification at the 24th meeting, that'd be great.
Teachers who are taking this training, are they going to be teaching the course this coming year?
Yes.
Did they volunteer for this? Are they
They were
assigned?
voluntold. No, I think there has been over the last couple of years some dissatisfaction with Carnegie, with the company itself. And so I think there was almost 100% agreement among the math teachers to look at something different from grade 6 through Algebra 1.
Are you also including people who might be a little bit reluctant to look
Yes.
at this? Because I think sometimes we end up with people who really are gung-ho about it, and it might be helpful to get people who are.
It's just about everyone teaching grade 6 through Algebra 1. And Algebra 2, I'm sorry, Algebra 2 as well.
So, anything else, or do we want to move that forward? We're good. Okay. The next one is also about illustrative math. What is different and what is that going to cover?
That will cover continued professional development after July 1.
But by a different, is it different organization or?
There are two companies that illustrative comes from. The training that we'll be doing over the next 2 days are from their curriculum warehouse. We had to book the training through a different provider for the work that'll happen after July 1st, but we'll have the same trainers. We clarified that.
So in terms of the overlap with Carnegie, or in terms of materials or anything else, is there a stop and date of Carnegie and the start of Illustrious?
Carnegie essentially goes away at the end of the school year. They've rebuilt Carnegie. I believe Mrs. Sherpier were you at the math meeting when the reps from Carnegie came? And they tried very hard to sell us on their new updated product. And all they did, quite frankly, was change the graphics in the chapters and made the pages a little more glossy than in the previous version.
I just want to ask about the budget on this. That seems to be substantial given the price we see in D. So what are we getting for for the amount that is under E?
The very large amount?
Yeah.
The very large amount are materials, 1 year's worth of, the adoption of the materials. So anymore, companies are less amenable to giving you any type of free products for pilots. One of the things, whether we eventually go with illustrative math or not, the adoption is program agnostic. So it's a lot of mathematical practice materials that we would be able to use, whether we go with illustrative, which I expect 99.9% we will go with. But if we ultimately decide to go with another program or another path, those materials are still very much usable.
When you're talking about going with illustrative, is anything else under consideration at this time? Because I seem to remember that there was at least one other contender originally. And what criteria are you going to use to decide that this is the way we want to go?
Yeah, so the other contender that we were looking at, there were several contenders. When it really came down, it came down to, were we going to stick with Carnegie, were we going to look at CPM, or were we going to look at illustrative? The decision was illustrative won out by far because of the flexibility of the problems. And so we're not looking at another product.
So also just in the text of this, the larger amount is 35 days of professional development.
Yes.
Is that spread out through the year?
It is. It's spread out through the year, and the lion's share of that is in it's real-time coaching. That the staff developers from Illustrative will actually come out and work with teachers in their classroom. Again, we feel really strongly about not pulling teachers to the extent possible during the school day.
How many teachers is this program supposed to?
Oh, so you're putting me on the spot there. That's good. So let me think. 4, that's 12. Look, I'm doing a math problem. I believe we're looking at a total of 22 teachers. 22 teachers.
Is that where they got the 35,000 from, the amount of teachers, or?
It's from their menu of professional development. There's a cost per day. The nice thing is we are large enough for them to send multiple trainers, but we're small enough for them not to have to send too many trainers to be able to do some in-classroom work. So really, when you look at that, even though that number $35,000 is jarring, when you think about an outside coach coming in, if we were to contract a coach through the IU, you're looking at between $1,800 and $2,200 a day. So when you would cost that out over 35 days, it's actually a fair price.
If there's nothing else, does the committee want to move that forward also? Okay. The next item is district funding of the PSAT, and I know we have been doing this for a number of years. Is there anything else to say about it? I mean, I do remember when we first decided to offer that, that we heard that there were many kids didn't take it because it wasn't mandatory, but that funding it and doing it within school gave everyone a practice test at least once before they took the SAT. So,
and I think with this year's high number of National Merit semifinalists, I think that has sparked some competition in kids that they'll be very glad to take it next year.
So we'll move that forward. The next item is all the assessments.
We're bringing this to the board so that you see a snapshot of the assessments that we'll be doing next school year. We're in the process of putting together an assessment calendar that will be online so that we lay out all the benchmark dates for the school year.
I think most of these we've heard about. Oh, do you have a
I just have
question?
quick questions. Doctor, I heard any conversations about some of the PSSAs being even less?
Yeah, so there's some rumors legislatively that They're looking at reducing the ELA section of the PSSA to 1 day and the math section of the PSSA to 2 days. 1 day being a calculator inactive section and another day being calculator active. When you add in science there, the goal would be to be able to do state testing in 1 week rather than spread it out over the month of April, which would be a welcome change.
Okay, so this is information, so we don't need to really make any decisions about that except to move it forward. First in math.
First in math, actually, Dr. Minder, would you like to speak about first in math?
Test.
Sorry about that. Yes, first in math, we started using this school year. It came after we looked and spoke with upper grade teachers about how we could improve student achievement and the idea that our students didn't have sufficient fact fluency as part of the Eureka program became evident. And so first in math was piloted and then adopted. We have been extremely successful, as Dr. Yanni mentioned earlier in the evening. It actually serves two purposes. One, it really helps support our students with fact fluency. But one of the things that came out of our gifted review that we had conducted in a previous year was that we needed to have academic competition and more opportunities for students to strive in that area. And as Dr. Yanni mentioned, we did take 10th in the nation, or the top 10 in the nation for first in math number of problems solved by our students, which is kind of amazing really in our first full year of doing it. So we were super proud of our kids, and it continues to be great support for kids really getting that opportunity to practice math.
Any comments or questions? We'll move that one forward. The renewal of the STAR assessments.
Yes, so we have really enjoyed STAR. It's provided us with outstanding data that we've been able to use for screening, for progress monitoring, for benchmarking our students, and so we would like to continue using that tool.
Just a quick question. All these items here on the agenda, are they already part of the budget? I
Yes.
mean, they're included in the budget.
Correct.
So if we see these numbers, that is...
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
If we agree, we'll move that one forward. Math seeds.
So at the K-2 level, looking for something to also support students outside of the classroom and inside the classroom during a centers type of opportunity with technology for practicing math. Math Seeds goes along with Reading Eggs, which is a reading tool that students use with great success. They did use it this past school year and would like to use it again next school year.
That sounds good. Have we totally phased out CERN?
No, so Zern continues to be used. It's really a companion to specifically Eureka, and we use that for students to have extra practice, for students who need enrichment and acceleration opportunities. These programs are more generalized to fact fluency, to math concepts, those sorts of things, where Zern is more closely tied to Eureka, the curriculum itself.
Any other questions or comments? We'll move that forward then. There are a number of Fontes and Pinnell items if you want to take them all.
Sure, I would be happy to. So the first one is the Fontes and Pinnell classroom pilot. Again, Dr. Yanni referenced that in his presentation. We did purchase 7 of the kits in this school year's budget so that we can use them for professional development on the 17th and 18th, as well as have teachers begin to plan and use them over the summer. This is for the remaining 10 of the 17 classrooms that will be piloting the program across the district for next school year. Would you let me just continue on here? L, we have been using the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment kits. This year, teachers had the opportunity to use either RAS or the F&P BAS to assess students' reading levels. I had done a previous presentation for the board regarding leveling students. And so now we're moving forward. All teachers will be expected to use the BAS, and so this is to equip all teachers with those kits. I'm actually going to, if you don't mind, well, I'll keep going. M is the leveled literacy materials. Again, Dr. Yanni referenced that we've had tremendous success at the elementary level with LLI, and so this is for the purchase of a middle school kit. We have not had that kit at the middle school previously, so the reading specialist will be trained this summer, as well as hopefully some special education teachers to start using that intervention. N is the independent reading classroom library materials. You will remember that this year we started K-3. We talked about the importance of all teachers having a core classroom library that's guaranteed by the school district rather than being dependent on teachers making their own purchases. So this year the materials are available to 4th and 5th grade teachers, and so we're asking for 4th and 5th grade teachers to have the same materials that K-3 have in terms of classroom libraries. The same is true. Look, on O, this is actually an item that I would ask Ms. Evans to correct. There was an error here. I apologize to the committee. This is actually supposed to read Heinemann, Founders and Pinnell benchmark assessments for special education. It's the same benchmark assessments, but coming out of the special education budget rather than the curriculum budget for supplying special education teachers with those materials. P is Founders and Pinnell guided reading materials. Again, we had done this K-3. They weren't yet available for 4-5, so we're building those libraries out for our 4th and 5th grade teachers. I will say, and I have said this before, the K-3 has been what I would characterize as wildly successful. The teachers and students absolutely love the books, and they're being used frequently and enthusiastically, and so 4th and 5th grade teachers are very eager to receive those same materials. I think that concludes all of the Founders and Pinnell purchases.
Okay.
A couple of these items are, I think, one-time purchases.
Yes, correct.
Which are sort of renewable or ones that every year you need to?
Actually,
increase?
all of these, for the most part, are one-time purchases. There are, for instance, in the LLI kits, there are some books that students take home, and occasionally you have to replace some of those pieces. That's probably the only one that actually has a regular supplemental material that would need to be replaced, and that is not a particularly expensive. The benchmark assessment kits, they would only need to be added to should we increase staff. Once we have them, they have them and they're good to go. The guided reading libraries, that's the full purchase, and that's not something that needs to be purchased year over year. Same thing with the independent reading. And the pilot, we'll see how the pilot goes, and we'll come back and report to the board next spring to say whether or not we want to expand the pilot, discontinue the pilot, or recommend some level of adoption. So that would be an increase, again, just to put it in additional classrooms should we decide to go that way. But other than that, these are really one-time purchases in totality.
And the STAR assessment?
So STAR assessment is an online subscription. We have determined that we'll get that subscription annually because as a district we're trying to avoid, I think, multi-year online commitments just because technology changes so quickly. So although sometimes you can get a discount for a multi-year commitment, we've had many discussions about choosing to be careful so that we don't lock ourselves into something. So that's a year over year for STAR.
4th and 5th grade materials, that is, you need to find space for that, right?
We have space for that, actually, yes. So when we, each of the building principals committed a room effectively to be a guided reading library, and that space is used, for instance, for English language instruction, those types of things where it's a small group, but we're ready to go.
Is it a different space than you identified for the younger grades?
Usually no. I mean, we don't have a tremendous amount of excess space in any of our elementary buildings, and so no, it'll be in this housed in the same room.
Right. Okay. So I thought.
Just had a question in regards to the, I guess, item K for the pilot program. With respect, so we just in April approved the other pilot purchase.
Yes.
And so I guess my question is, can you give it's a clarity question. So since we just approved that it's a pilot, and so this is the rest of the classrooms, how does that work in terms of timing since we haven't?
Yes. Okay. So we, Dr. Yanni and I, and the principals and the curriculum department, we asked teachers to basically apply to be part of the pilot. And then we selected teachers to try to get a representation across different buildings, different grade levels, and we landed on 17 as the number of teachers who will be piloting next year across all 4 buildings. in this year's budget, we had a previous approval and purchase of 7 kits. On the 17th, teachers will be, and so there's K kits, first grade, second grade, and third grade kits across the buildings. Teachers will go, they'll unpack, and they'll be able to work with those kits the 17th and 18th, take materials home over the summer. The remainder of the kits we'll order in the 1920 budget. The other 10, they'll arrive after we order them on July 1, and then teachers will in August need to unpack those materials and be able to begin using them. So we opted to split between this year and next year in the budget for the pilot so that teachers could have hands-on with the materials prior to August.
So are we good with moving K through PE forward? Okay.
I also have Q and R.
Okay, go on.
Okay, so Q, we have been using Performance Tracker in the district as our data warehouse tool, where we store PSSA scores, VAS scores, all kinds of things, and then use that for analysis regarding our programs. We are recommending that we discontinue use of Performance Tracker in favor of use of Linkit. We have discussed it at previous meetings. It was in my original budget presentation. It is being widely adopted in the county, in Bucks County, and really southeastern Pennsylvania as a superior tool, specifically in terms of its analytic capabilities for data.
How does the cost compare to Performance Tracker?
It is more expensive. I don't have the exact number at the top of my head, Dr. Yanni. I don't know if you do. I want to say it's in the ballpark of about less than $10,000 more.
Yeah, it's less than $10,000. The problem with Performance Tracker is aligned to our current student information system, which is eSchool. Having used Performance Tracker for about 15 years, they never made it user-friendly. I see Mrs. Sherpier shaking her head. And if we want teachers to use data and principals to use data, again, everyone has finite time and energy, and when you spend all your time and energy to get the data, you don't have any real time to work with it. Linkit is much better.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to ask. If it was more user friendly.
Yeah, it's way more. Mr. Vinegoff was able to say that it's a $7,000 cost difference. Thank you for that information. It is way more user friendly, and in addition, they provide a large number of aggregated district level reports. So they'll provide county comparisons, they'll provide cohort comparisons year over year. So although we can go in and it is much more user friendly, they also, if we say in advance, for instance, Dr. Yanni wanted to look at, how did cohorts do in math from the time we had an old curriculum, they'll generate those reports for us. And the graphics are outstanding, and it will make it much easier for us to use data internally as well as share it with the board and the community. So I think it will be a dramatic improvement for us.
Sounds like it's definitely worth the price difference.
It is. So may I go into R? So we're using Career Zone in the past year to meet the state's career readiness requirements. You'll recall that in grades 3 through 11, we actually have to have students collect and then store data relative to their career explorations. That is part of our PIMS reporting to the state. Career Zone has been very successful at the elementary schools, and so we're actually looking with this price to expand it all the way through the high school. What will be nice is then students can really look back and have that cumulative record of their career interests. So as an 11th grader, if they're thinking they want to be a doctor, they can look back and say in 3rd grade, I wanted to be an astronaut, and how has my journey changed over time. So in addition to giving us really nice, clean reporting for state purposes, an easy teacher and student-friendly tool, it'll give students that continuity that right now we don't have.
Comments or questions?
So that's a yearly subscription?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll move that forward.
And Linkit is a yearly subscription as well.
Okay. Okay, then I guess we have 3 that are Mr. Rees.
You were about to say technology related, but we just went through a whole slew of tech related. So these are the Google Cloud Itopia proposal. We have some high-end labs here in the high school where we teach students to use industry level tools. And those tools, although more and more software is moving to the cloud, those tools are still locally installed, the Adobe suite, the AutoCAD suite. Those labs are 8 years old, and so all the equipment is entering end of life. And we priced out what it would take to run the newest version of the software there, and about $60,000 to replace those labs. And we took a pause because at a time when tech is iterating so fast, the idea of making an investment in standalone labs for niche software seemed a little silly. So I reached out to Google, and desktop as a service is something that Google Cloud and Amazon Cloud provide to industries and to universities, and they don't really have a K-12 partnership yet. So we're going to be one of 3 schools partnering with Google, and they want to do everything they can to make this successful. So we piloted it this year. We had our students running that software virtually on their Chromebooks. The actual software was running in Google Cloud. Our teachers were right away very excited for the flexibility that this would bring them. So we have teachers on board, we have a supervisor on board, and I had some innovation in my title. So it was a great opportunity for us to just dive in and to partner with Google on making this work and exploring it next year. So we are investing $13,000 instead of $60,000, and it might not work, or it might, and we will learn a lot and we will leave, but that's the cost of exploration.
So Phil, I have a question on this. So typically I think I'm all for this idea of moving to the cloud. When it comes to something specific to where it's like CAD related, I would wonder how much is specific with the Chromebooks that they can keep. I'm thinking through some of the things I've done where it requires a heavy intensive graphic process.
Right, so what happens, this is exactly where all of that heavy intensive processing is happening in the cloud. You're just like when you're working with Word docs, right, or watching a YouTube video, all of that processing is happening somewhere else. You just have a portal here to where you're viewing the action, you're manipulating. So when we tested it, at first that was my skepticism, right? How long would it take to render something in AutoCAD, for example? And so we went and we pressed render, and the teacher turns around because they're used to having several minutes, maybe 15 before it's done. Turned to me and blinked. It's done. Right? Sure, it's done because Google servers just throw all the resources that you need for that moment to get it done. So we were really, really impressed with what that performance looks like. And like we've done in our business labs, the next step would be to remove the existing hardware once we're really successful with it, and you attach your Chromebook to a large screen, right? Because really what you want when you're doing that kind of design is to be able to visualize things. That's a $15 cable, right? So to answer your question, yes, in the test we were really, really impressed. Tested it for a few weeks, and so now we'll move forward.
So in those classrooms currently, we have full desktop computers?
You have desktops set up in rows, kids sit in rows, they work in rows. And across the hall, we have a business lab, which used to be like that. Now that lab isn't like that. We pulled out all the furniture. We have wraparound desks, places where kids can plug in their Chromebook if they want to. We have collaborative tables in the middle. And we have very different teaching dynamic. And so that's the excitement that those teachers have around being able to remove all of those obstructions from their classroom. The first thing is, let's get this off the ground. We can keep the existing equipment there as a redundancy during this time of transition.
Okay, we'll move that one forward. There are a couple more.
Yeah. The renewal of our internet services contract with the MCIU, so that's pretty standard. They're our internet service provider. Then we have an extension for eSchool Plus and IEP Plus for the purpose of state reporting. So we are in the process of our transition to Instant Campus. This has been a massive data migration project in coordination with just every part of our institution. Within that migration, sometimes schools will go a whole year running systems concurrently, sometimes less. Even though we could complete and submit state reporting by the end of the month, and that's when our contract with these schools would conclude, we would not be able to go in and make any corrections out of the database in July and then August. And in the motion, I list all the different reports, right, where we could have issues, right, if we had to go. And so this really is a proactive insurance policy, giving us access to that database as it is for those last 2 months, right? So really clean up house before we complete a transition.
I just want to add, when we're talking about state reporting, we have to make sure that we're accurate. Funding depends upon it. Our school performance profile, all of that rests on it. And so in terms of funding, a few mistakes could cost us far more than the contract extension. And to Mr. Vinogradov's point, there are districts, I believe North Penn ran 2 SIS for an entire year. We're doing this conversion in a shorter period of time. So we thank the board for their support of that extension.
Yeah, and there was a lot of collaboration with the business office as well. As soon as we identified that we needed to do this, we went and entered negotiations back and forth with our school to really work it out.
If there are no other comments, we'll move this forward. I think this is a good thing to support. Okay, student activities. I do see that there is a proposal to add a French field for French exchange. Any comments or questions about that?
My understanding is that there hasn't been a French exchange in some time. There's a great deal of student interest around it. Our numbers in French classes are waning. I believe this is one of the ways that they are, the teachers are trying to gain some student interest.
Is that 3,000 per student, or is that total for all 10?
That's per student.
Per 3,000 per student? What about the 2 teachers?
The cost for the teachers would be substitutes while they're away. And our substitute costs are about $126 a day.
Do you know if they had any fundraisers planned for helping subsidize?
They do. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I did approve a number of fundraisers that were pretty lucrative to reduce the cost for students.
Also note that this is mostly timed after our academic year, like the trip itself. So the amount of substitute teachers time is not that much.
Right.
So I think, if I remember correctly, that this is kind of the same formula that we use for the other exchange trips, where the students who are going, they pay for the amount of their trip overseas, but what we do is subsidize the students coming over and the kinds of activities that we need to do for them. And if it follows the same model, I would be in support of it.
That's correct.
Yeah, and the money that we're budgeting, I think I'm correct, it's for when the kids come over here, the activities, the trips that the students from the French school take here is what we're approving.
That's what I thought.
Yes. Yes.
So we're not paying for our kids to go over there.
So this is to pay for the students coming from France.
Activities and
Activities
right now to do here.
Okay, there's one other trip, but I don't think we have any questions. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that. Otherwise, we would move both these forward. Okay, and the conferences, that's our last item. So I think I see most of it is this one conference that all the reading specialists, or maybe not all, a number of reading specialists and instructional support specialists are all going on.
Yes, the IU is sponsoring this reciprocity of reading and writing with shared and interactive writing foundational skills workshop. The reading specialists and the instructional support specialists are really our literacy leaders right now. And our next step in our process as we develop guided reading and reading best practices is how to encourage that recursive nature of writing and reading so that we write about our reading, and this will support them in leading that work.
Can you say something about the CBT modules that are running from June to December? And we said for Kim Echeverria.
Hi, Michelle Clegg, Director of People Services. First time I got to talk tonight. This is exciting. Thanks for asking the question. We are very fortunate that we have a psychologist, BCBA combined working in the district. Most districts have to contract out to get such services. We do have 2 BCBAs, but again, one of them is also a psychologist.
May I stop you here for a moment?
Okay.
Can you explain the acronyms, please?
The cognitive behavior training modules. I can't explain it as well as they probably can, but it is a more intensive type of support for behaviors, addressing student behaviors. And so to add that to our repertoire within our district will be very helpful for our students who are experiencing intensive behaviors.
Are these anxiety behaviors, or can it be any type of?
They can be. I mean, we often see it with our autistic support program.
Can I also ask in regards to the South Summer Institute, what that might be about? Does anything know?
I believe that this is, Ron Hillman is an English teacher at the high school. Dr. Yanni, he's our AP instructor for English.
He is. The AP exam, I'm sorry, Dr. Miner, I'm talking over you.
That's okay.
The AP exam is changing, and so is the curriculum. For us to be able to offer that course as an AP, Mr. Hillman needs to be trained, so it's a week-long training at LaSalle.
If there's nothing else, we'll move those forward. Okay. Community input.
Jen Kuznets, Fort Washington. I just have one quick question. When we talk about, I guess, renewing the subscriptions for some of our programs like First in Math and Math Seeds, do we also get subscriptions for like the public library so students in the summer have access to those kinds of things, especially in the younger grades where we don't have the one-to-one technology offering? That's it, thanks.
Hi guys.
Can you state your name and the part of the community you're from, please?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Megan O'Halloran and I'm from Willow Grove. I'm a rising senior at UDHS and I'm here with a suggestion. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, you guys, for doing all the work that you do. I know not a lot of high school students or students in general kind of like know what's going on at the top of everything and don't know how much work you guys really put into every student. But to get to my point, my suggestion, our history curriculum is very comprehensive, with one notable exception being the LGBT community's contributions to history, particularly as in our citizens' fight for civil rights. As the GSA co-president and as a lesbian student myself, I was left confused and disappointed by the lack of attention given to this area in every single one of my classes. I'm fortunate enough to come from a supportive family and have opportunities to learn about our rich history outside of school. but I worry that a significant amount of students who are LGBT and our straight peers are missing out on a valuable part of our collective history. In honor of Pride Month, I'm here to recommend on behalf of all students that we review and revise the current curriculum accordingly. The GSA leadership and our allies would be happy to assist you in these efforts, and we look forward to a more inclusive education in Upper Dublin's future. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to address either of these questions?
I can start with the First in Math. Most of the subscriptions that we have, like First in Math, Reading Eggs, and Math Seeds, are actually 24/7, and they're 365-day subscriptions. So students who do have technology access can use them at home, and we try to get programs that are platform agnostic, so people can use them on their cell phone. For instance, Reading Eggs can be used on a cell phone, any type of computer, with the exception of a Kindle. And although there are obvious student exceptions who don't have access to technology, the vast majority of our students do. As for the question with the library, we do partner with the library. Our first grade students go to the library, they get library cards, and our library does have extensive subscriptions to things like Pebble Go, et cetera, that students can continue to use throughout the summer, and we do encourage parents to take advantage of that.
With regard to the social studies curriculum, when Mr. Hoffman comes on board, we're going to be looking at the social studies curriculum from multiple angles. One of the challenges with looking at any product out there is they're very sterile, they're whitewashed, and diversity is not nearly celebrated. And whether that's diversity in sexual orientation or race, ethnicity, whatever that, however you look at that. So one of the things that I see us doing over the next 2 years is building our secondary social studies curriculum in a concept-based curriculum way, where we look at different periods of time through the lenses of different groups of people. And so that work will be underway starting this summer and into the fall. And thank you. It's always a pleasure to have a student come out and share some information with us.
Any final comments before we adjourn for the evening after this longer than usual meeting? Okay, thank you. And when is our next meeting? Not till September. Stay tuned.